Alright, so we're going to start by sketching out the shape that we want, which is going to be a cylinder. So I go to the top plane, draw a circle. I want this to be 44 millimeters in diameter and 200 millimeters tall, so we'll extrude it by that much. And that's going to be our rough shape. Now I want to build some channels along the edges of this so that I have something to feed my tubes into, but I don't know exactly where I want them yet. So what I'm going to do is start by sketching a circle here. This is just temporary. This is to represent the interior of the container once I hollow it out. Then I'm going to sketch another circle here, and this represents the interior of the channel that I'm building, which is going to be 6 millimeters. And what I want is for this to just barely intersect this. And the idea is I want there to be a little gap in the wall between the main chamber and these chambers, but not to have that gap big enough to pull the tube through. And I'm really just eyeballing this and seeing what looks right. So I just want this to be very small, a little bit further than that. Alright, 21.5 looks good. So I no longer need this circle. We'll get rid of that. And that got rid of my measurements, so I'm going to put that back in. And 6 millimeters was the interior. The exterior is actually 12 millimeters, so I'll do that. So I don't want to just extrude this down because I want it to curve in. So what I'm going to do is go to the right plane, and I am going to start a new sketch and just draw the path that I want it to take. So we're going to start in the middle of this and just go straight down. I'm going to take it further than I need and just cut off the rest later. Then I want it to curve in, which I'm going to represent with a circle. I want the curve to be about 15 millimeters high, so I'll set this to 30. And I want it to be 15 millimeters away so it just intersects. I don't want it to intersect the bottom, I want it to come within, I'm going to say 6 millimeters of the bottom. So we'll say 15 plus 6. And there we go. And I want the path to go all the way to the middle of the model. Now we're going to grab the scissors and just cut away the parts we don't need, and we should be left with the path we want it to take. So now we are going to exit that sketch, grab the circle that we made earlier, do a swept boss. It's asking us what path we want to take. It's going to be this path. Okay, that, and we're good. And I actually want a total of 11 of these, so I want 5 on each side. So I'm going to select the first one. I'm going to change linear to circular pattern. It's asking me for the path, so I pick that circle, and 6 is good because I want 5 on each side, and it counts this one as the first. But 15 degrees is a little too tight, so I'm going to increase this until it looks right. What I'm looking for, I don't want this to get further back from there. So actually I think 27 looks pretty good. And I want it to be on both sides, so I'm going to check off direction 2, symmetric, and OK. Now I want to cut the holes into this for the tubes to actually go, so I'm going to start a new sketch. Draw a circle right there. I said I want the interior diameter to be 6. Now, I don't need to draw the path this time because I draw it last time, so we're going to keep that selected and pick swept cut. It's asking me what path I want. I'm going to go to my earlier sweep, select its path, and OK that. And that's what we want, but we want 11 of them, so while it's still selected, circular pattern, select the circle. What did I say? 28, right? So we're going to keep that 6. Sorry, 27. And symmetric on the other side. Next, I want to hollow this out so that it can actually hold water, and I could just do another circle here and extrude it down, but that's going to give me a flat bottom, and I kind of want it to be rounded out at the bottom. So I'm going to go to the right plane. What I'm going to do is a revolved cut, so I just have to basically draw a cross section of what I want, and it'll spin that around for me. And now I want the bottom to be round, so I'll do that. And the interior diameter is going to be 38 millimeters. And if I do 19 from the bottom. It's going to just hit that. Now, I don't want it to hit that. I want it to be 1 millimeter above where these tubes hit, and these should be 3 up. So I'm going to add 4 to that, which gives me 23, and that's right where I want that. Now I'm going to take my box tool, pick the bottom of that for one corner, all the way to the top, and then we're going to take our scissors and just cut away what we don't want, which is going to be this, this, and this. And that's going to be the tool we use to cut with. So let's go to here, Revolved Cut. It's going to ask me what axis I want to rotate it around. It's going to be the middle right there. Okay, that. And let's give it back its skin and see what it looks like. Alright, that's what I wanted. Now I want to put a little bump somewhere in the middle just so I don't have water pooling in the center and it just kind of flows off to the side. So I'm going to go to the right plane again, start another sketch, and let's put it in X-ray mode so I can see the inside. I'm just going to kind of sketch out roughly the design I want. So I want it to have a slope that goes outwards, and I want it to have a little spiky thing there that goes in like this. And the idea is I want the tubes to butt up against this and not be able to hit this perpendicular. So basically, there will always be a way for water to get in. It looks pretty close to what I want actually, but I do want to make it a little smaller. So we're going to take the Smart Dimension tool. I'll make that 5. Let's have this 7.5. This is a little taller than I think I want to, so we'll make that 15. And I don't think I need this to be this steep, so we'll make you 20. That looks better. And we'll exit that. While it is selected, we pick Revolved Boss/Base. Again, it's asking me for what axis I want to rotate on. It's going to be that one. Okay, that. And let's put the skin back on. Alright, so now water will just flow off of that and into my tube channels. So I actually only have 10 tubes that are going into this, but I have 11 channels, so what I want to do is use this middle one as an overflow pipe. So first thing I'm going to do is fill it in by drawing a circle over it. And I'm just going to extrude this all the way down to the bottom, which is 200 millimeters away. Why did I do through wall? In the opposite direction. Now that that's filled in and I won't have water going in through this channel, I am going to cut a hole. I want this to be a little bit smaller than my tubing so that if I try to stick tube in it, I realize I'm doing something wrong. So it's going to be 4.5 millimeters wide. And this one I will extrude through all. Alright, so now I have a tube here, and any water that gets into this tube is going to flow out of here and land into a jar that I have strategically placed underneath it. I do still need to cut a hole into the tube so that water can get into that, but I will be doing that later. Now I want to build some rails on the inside, and the idea is that I'm going to have a little styrofoam floater in here that's going to help me measure how much water is in the container. And I think this is narrow enough that I can just toss it in and be okay, but just in case I do need some guidance, I want to have the rails already in there so I don't have to reprint the whole thing. So let's see, I want this to be 7 millimeters in diameter. I'm eyeballing it at first, but I do need to know the exact measurement because I may need to use this to model something. I want it a little further. Alright, so now if I need to model it, I can use these dimensions and I will get it precisely. I want another one on this side. Also 7 millimeters. And also 6.5 away. Then I want another one up here where the drain is, but it's going to look a little different. So I want it to be, I'm going to start as a square. I want this to be about 5 wide, so we'll do 2.5 there. And misclicked. 2.5 there. And this I want to be, let's go with 13 millimeters away. I think that looks good. Alright. Now I want to cut little notches in the middle of them, just so I can have a little guide peg. So one will go there. Don't want this to be 2 millimeters wide, so that'll be 1 on either side. And yeah, you know what? I'll just go all the way into there. And we'll just trim away the extra. Alright, and now for the bottom ones. These are a little trickier just because they're at an angle, so I'm going to start by drawing a line from the center of the piece to the center of the peg. And I'm just using the yellow guidelines to draw this out. And then again for this one. And of course I'll use my trim tool later to fix this up. Alright. And I want these to also be 2 millimeters thick. And now we're just going to trim away what we don't need. Alright. And now we just extrude this down and we should have our rails. That's going to go 200 millimeters in the opposite direction. Just want to make sure it's not poking through anything. Cool. And okay that. And here are our rails. So now that I have my rails in place, I want to cut the overflow entrance. So basically I want to poke a hole right here, and that's going to go through the rails as well, which is why I wanted to wait. And then if the water gets high enough, it will flow into there and flow out. So I'm going to go to the front plane, and I'm just going to draw a simple circle. Going to make it 4.5 millimeters wide. Same as the actual overflow thing. Now I'm planning to have a lid for this, which is going to hold some electronics, and that is going to come about 5 millimeters in. So I want the top of this to be right up against that. So that is going to be 5 millimeters plus half the diameter, which is 2.25. Alright, and now we are going to do an extruded cut. And this should be, what did I say, 21.5, I think? Yeah. Cool. And there is our overflow. So if the water gets this high, it's just going to flow in there and flow out instead of flowing onto my electronics. So the last thing I want to do is give myself a way to mount this. So I'm going to go to the front plane and create a new plane. I want this to be right up against the edge of this. So this circle is 44 millimeters wide, so I want it to be 22 off center. And yeah, that is where I want it. So now I'm going to go to that plane and I'm just going to sketch out what I want. So I'm going to start with a circle. This will be 15 millimeters wide, and this is going to be the thing that I put the screw through. So I know I want the screws to be 65 millimeters apart, so it should be 65 over 2 away from the center. And I think I wanted it to be, let's say, about 20 down from the top. Alright, so now I need a way to connect this. So what I want to do is kind of draw like a wing thing that goes into here and just give it like a nice sloping angle. And since this is rounded out, that'll just kind of gradually mesh with it, and it should look pretty nice. And support the weight. So let's go back to sketch. Using the spline tool, I'm going to do the top part first. Don't want this to go to the middle. All right. For the bottom, I want a steeper angle, and that's mostly for my printer's benefit. So I'm going to start down here. I'm actually going to intersect a little bit of the circle. That's mostly just to keep a steep angle. That way my printer's only got to go a little bit out over nothing with each time. So we'll then trim up away this part. And let's close this in. All right. So now we have our shape. Let's extrude this out. I want to go in the opposite direction, and I think 5 millimeters should be thick enough. Now this does intersect my channel a bit, and also the inside there, but that's okay. I'm just going to cut that out later once I've made them all. So we'll okay that. Now I want this to be symmetric, so while I still have it selected, I hit mirror. It's asking me what plane I want to mirror across, and that's the right plane. And there we go. So I have my mounting brackets, but I want 2 more of them. So I'm going to select the mirror, go to features, and select linear pattern this time. I'm going to pick any of these vertical lines. And I want 3, but that's way too close together. I'm happy with that, so we're going to okay that. Now I just got to put some drill holes in those, so I'm going to go to the front, select the hole wizard, pick the hole type I want, which is going to be countersink number 8, go to positions, and I'm just going to find the center of each of these and put that there. And you'll see how it kind of looks like it's overlapping, which would be a problem for the printer, like if it has to go in like that. But that's just the outside of the countersink, so we'll be fine once it's actually drilled. One more. Alright, so they're in place. Click the check mark, and there we go. That is how we will attach it to the wall. The only problem is you can see we got some stuff inside, so we're going to have to cut that away. So I'm going to go back to my top, and I'm basically just going to sketch out the parts that intruded. So here. A little bit here. This part here is going to be a little bit more tricky, but basically I'm going to sketch each side of it, and then I'm just going to use the trim tool to cut the rest away. Take the trim tool. Okay, we should be able to just do an extruded cut and get rid of all of that stuff. I want to go in far enough to get all of this stuff, but I don't want to mess up the curve towards the bottom. I think that works. Yeah. So now it's not intruding anymore, and we still have the thickness we want. So I'm going to do one last visual inspection, make sure there's nothing that might not print the way I want. And I think we look good, so we're going to send it to Cura. Alright, so here we are in Cura. First thing I want to do is just face this correctly and move it into the middle of my build plate. Now I am good with most of the default settings. The one thing I do want to change though is the wall thickness and the top/bottom thickness. That's going to determine how many solid layers it prints, and I want to jack that up to 1.5. Now unfortunately that's going to make this almost entirely solid. There's going to be a little bit of infill at the bottom, but most of the rest will be solid. So it is going to take frickin' forever to print, but hopefully it won't leak. So now we'll slice it up and send it to the printer. So here is the printed out part. Pretty happy with how it came out. Details nice and clean. So we will print out the rest and get this installed.